What if I told you that morality wasn't just some vague set of philosophical ideas, but a fundamental force of the universe? I mean, with its own actual physics. Today, we're diving into a framework that completely recasts reality itself. It suggests that our universe isn't just a bunch of random events, but a finely tuned system, an operating system, designed specifically for our moral and cognitive growth.
All right, let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at a major glitch in our current system. Then, we'll analyze the old operating system that's running our world. After that, we'll introduce a radical upgrade, uncover the mind-blowing physics that powers it, and finally, we'll see what it all means for you, how to optimize for your true self.
So let's start with a really strange paradox that's happening right now. We are building technology with, almost godlike power. We're creating artificial intelligence that can think and create. And yet, we have never been more anxious about the future we're building. So why are we so afraid? You see the symptoms of this everywhere, right? There's this growing panic around AI, this fear that we're basically building a rival we can't control. Our economic systems, our social structures, they all feel so fragile, like they could just crumble. The source material for this explainer calls this a governance vacuum. We have all this exponential power, but absolutely no framework for wisdom to guide it. And these aren't separate problems. They're all error messages, all pointing to a deep systemic issue.
You know, the framework we're exploring today argues that we are looking for the bug in completely the wrong place. The flaw isn't in the new AI or the complex algorithms. The real problem is the old, outdated operating system running inside our own heads. It's the fundamental paradigm we use to see and build our world.
So to even begin to fix a bug, you first have to understand the code. And the current operating system, the source material, calls it rational thinking, or RT. Think of it as the invisible architecture that our entire modern world is built on. So what is rational thinking? Well, it's the idea that physical stuff, matter, is the only thing that's truly real. In this worldview, your consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings, they're all just an accidental byproduct of brain chemistry. This OS gets stuck in what the source calls nonsense parlor games. You know, asking those old philosophical paradoxes like, can God create a stone he cannot lift? It's a system trying to use basic human logic to define the entire system, and that just leads to dead ends and confusion. Now this is where it gets really interesting. This slide lays out the two paradigms right next to each other. For rational thinking, the old OS, matter is absolute reality, life is about survival and profit, and success is measured by things like GDP. But look at the upgrade, quantum governance. Here, the self, what the source calls the nofs, our core cognitive essence, that's the primary reality. The whole point of life isn't collecting stuff, it's about cognitive development. And success is measured by a totally different metric, CDEV, your own personal growth.
And this quote just nails the core conflict. The old RT technology, because it can only measure physical things, builds systems that are all about extraction and addiction. You know, maximizing profit, maximizing user engagement. But governance technology is totally different. It's designed to build systems that help us grow, that foster our own inner development. Okay, so if the old operating system is buggy and hitting its limits, what's the upgrade? Well, the sources propose a completely new paradigm, a new kernel for reality. It's called the Quantum Governance Operating System.
And here's the foundational shift. This is huge. In this new view, the universe is not some vast, empty, random accident. No. It's what's called a NAFS-centric universe, a personalized incubator, a kind of cognitive stress test that's been rendered specifically for you to test and grow your moral core. Reality in this model is a customized learning environment. Now, to navigate this new OS, you've got to be able to tell the difference between two kinds of truth. First, there's a sidq, or truthfulness. This is the physical world, the apparition. It follows consistent rules, like the laws of physics, so it's truthful. But it's just the surface. It's the peel of the fruit. And then there's al-haq, which is the ultimate truth. This is the essence, the underlying moral law, the entire reason the simulation exists in the first place. It's the juice you get when you actually process the fruit of reality. Okay, so this brings us to what might be the most mind-bending part of this whole framework. If reality is a system that's designed for our moral development, does it have a master equation? Does morality have its own physics? The answer proposed here is a huge, resounding yes. We're all familiar with probably the most famous equation in all of science, right? the one that unlocked the secrets of the atom and basically governs the entire physical world. Yeah, that one. It tells us that a tiny, tiny amount of mass can be converted into a just tremendous amount of physical energy.
So, the quantum governance framework proposes an equivalent equation, a parallel. But instead of calculating physical energy, this one calculates moral value, or what the source calls essence. E equals UD squared. This is the master equation of what the source calls governance physics. And check out how brilliantly the parallels work. U stands for utility. That's your raw resources. Think of it like your time, your money, your health, your talents. It's the mass of your life. D stands for Dean, which here means the established order or the universal moral protocol. It's like the immutable source code for ethical behavior that runs the whole simulation. And E is the output, essence, the eternal value, the wisdom that you create. So the really crucial point is how these variables interact. Your resources, your you, that's just temporary fuel. But the Dean, your alignment with that moral source code, that's the great multiplier. And you notice it's squared, just like the speed of light. This means that even a small improvement in your ethics, in your alignment, releases an exponential amount of meaning and purpose. Think about it. A company with massive resources, a high U, but a corrupt culture, a very low D, will eventually create zero lasting value. Zero.
Okay, so if this is the new OS for reality, how do you actually use it? What does it mean to win the game? Let's take a look at what the new user experience is like.
Well, for starters, the goal of life completely flips. It's no longer about accumulating more more money, more power, more things. The new key performance indicator, the new KPI, is CDEV, which stands for Cognitive Development. This is a measure of your internal growth, your wisdom, your maturity, your ability to govern yourself. For a whole society, it actually replaces GDP as the ultimate metric of success.
The framework even shows this equation in action using two historical models. First, you have the Pharaoh model. It has massive resources, a really high U, but it's based on tyranny and corruption, so a very low D. The result? Zero lasting essence. I mean, they leave behind some cool physical ruins, but their moral code is totally dead. But then you have the Prophet model. It starts with almost nothing, super low U, but operates with maximum ethical alignment, a very high D. The result is infinite essence. It's an idea that literally changes the course of history. When you get right down to it, this whole framework isn't just about physics or ancient history, it's a mirror. It's suggesting that your life is not just some series of random events, it's a coherent system. And just like any system, it has been designed to optimize for a very specific output. And that leaves us with the final and most important question. Your life right now is running an equation. So is your personal operating system set to maximize you, the temporary fuel of resources and pleasure? Or is it calibrated to maximize E, the eternal essence that only comes from squaring your alignment with moral truth? What is your life actually optimizing for?